Rosa's world crumbles when her husband Oliver dies, leaving her in solitude and poverty. Struggling to cope, she returns to her cleaning job at the bank, where a shocking discovery changes everything. Mocked by colleagues, Rosa learns of an unexpected inheritance that could transform her life. With newfound strength, she sets out on a journey that intertwines her fate with the lives of those in need, uncovering profound secrets along the way. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is the Linda's Stories channel. I hope you enjoy this story. Rosa's house was small and old. The paint on the walls was chipped, and the furniture was worn out. In a town, she and her husband Oliver lived with just enough money to eat and pay bills. Oliver worked hard every day, but his job didn't pay much. Rosa cleaned at the bank, where her hands got rough from scrubbing floors and wiping desks. She was a pretty woman, but her tired eyes and messy hair made her look older. Her clothes were simple and a bit too big, as if they were chosen for comfort rather than style. Then Oliver died. Rosa felt a deep sadness that wouldn't go away. She cried a lot, and her face looked even more tired. At the funeral, it was just Rosa and the quiet. No friends came. It was as if the world didn't notice Oliver was gone. Rosa stood by the grave, her tears falling like the rain around her. She held onto the old coat Oliver had given her, the one with the buttons missing. It smelled like him, and it was all she had left. After Oliver was gone, the town's view of Rosa changed. They saw her as someone left behind. When she walked through the streets, her head down, people would whisper. They talked about how she was always alone now, her face sad and her clothes plain. The kids who ran past her dusty shoes would giggle, not knowing the weight of her sadness. At the market, the sellers would glance at her empty basket and give a knowing look. They thought being alone made her weak. Rosa felt their stares like the cold wind, and she wrapped Oliver's old coat tighter around her. It was frayed at the edges, but it was warm. It was a piece of him that she could still hold on to. In the town's eyes, she was just the quiet widow, but to her, she was someone trying to hold on to the pieces of a life once filled with love. Rosa returned to work, her hands moving mechanically as she cleaned. The funeral had drained her savings, and she needed the paycheck. At work, a colleague, seeing her struggle, suggested she claim Oliver's inheritance. Rosa entered the bank, her steps hesitant. The air was cool and smelled of paper and ink. She approached the counter where Rob, the cashier, was tapping away at his keyboard, a smirk on his face. "Back again, Rosa?" Rob's voice was loud enough for others to hear. "What is it this time? The grand inheritance of $10? Laughter bubbled around the room, bouncing off the marble floors. Rosa's cheeks burned, but she stood firm. "Please check the account," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Rob rolled his eyes and began typing, his fingers clacking mockingly on the keys. "All right, let's see this fortune," he said, sarcasm dripping from each word. The screen flickered and Rob's smile faltered. His eyes darted across the numbers, disbelief etching his features. The room fell silent, the laughter dying down as everyone sensed the shift. What is this?" Rob's voice cracked. The account balance displayed a number that made Rosa's head spin. Millions. Rosa leaned in, her eyes meeting Rob's. "That's Oliver's inheritance," she said, a quiet strength in her words. Rob's face went pale, his earlier bravado gone. I didn't know," he stammered. Rosa nodded, her gaze steady. "Please transfer it to the account I've provided." As Rosa left the bank, the weight of the moment settled on her shoulders. She had stepped in, a woman mocked and underestimated, and walked out with the means to change her life. Oliver's secret was now spilled out. He was the sole heir to a fortune, a legacy of wealth from a family he had fled. They had been cruel, and he had chosen a life of love over luxury. Now, with his passing, Rosa stood unknowingly at the crossroads of a new life, one that Oliver had silently secured for them. Rosa walked into her quiet house. The air felt heavy, like it was holding all her sadness. The room was dim, with only a little light coming through the curtains. She sat down on the creaky old chair and looked around. Everything reminded her of Oliver. She picked up one of his books from the shelf. A letter fell out. It was from Oliver. Rosa's hands shook as she opened it. Her eyes filled with tears as she read his words, explaining about the money, his family, and why he never used it. The tears ran down her cheeks and she wiped them away with the back of her hand. Her body felt tired, but her heart felt full of love for Oliver. Outside, the sky was grey and it started to rain softly, like the world was crying with her. Rosa made a decision. She would use the money to help others. Oliver had died of cancer, and she wanted to make sure no other child would have to fight it alone. She would start a place for children with cancer, a place full of hope and love, just like Oliver would have wanted. Rosa stepped into the children's cancer centre, her heart heavy but hopeful. The walls were painted a cheerful yellow, but the air was still filled with a quiet sadness. She could hear the soft beeps of machines and the distant laughter of children trying to find joy in the midst of their battles. She walked slowly, her eyes taking in the small beds and the brave faces of the children. Some had lost their hair, but not their spirits. Nurses moved gently from bed to bed, offering kind words and warm smiles. Rosa's hands were clasped tightly in front of her, her knuckles white. She wore a simple dress, one that Oliver had liked. Her face showed the marks of her grief, but also the determination to make a difference. As she moved through the centre, she felt Oliver's presence with her. She knew this was the right thing to do, to use the money to help these children. She promised herself that she would do everything she could to bring a little light into their lives. Rosa's eyes widened as she spotted Rob, the cashier from the bank, sitting in a corner of the Children's Cancer Centre. His head was bowed, his hands clasped tightly around a small, pale hand, his daughter Elise's. The room was filled with the hum of machines and the soft murmur of voices, but Rosa could feel the weight of Rob's worry from across the space. She approached hesitantly, her footsteps quiet on the linoleum floor. Rob looked up, his face flushing with embarrassment. "Rosa," he stammered. I'm sorry for how I acted before, it's just that—" He was cut off by Elise's weak cough, a sound that seemed too large for such a small body. Rosa knelt beside Elise's bed, her heart aching at the sight of the girl's fragile frame. The room was bright, with drawings of trees and animals on the walls, but Elise's bed was a stark island in the midst of it all. "It's okay, Rob," Rosa said softly. "Tell me what's wrong." Rob's eyes were red-rimmed as he explained. "Elise needs an operation. It's expensive, and I don't have the money." His voice broke, and he looked away, ashamed. Rosa reached out, her hand resting on Rob's shoulder. "I'll help," she said firmly. "Oliver left us more than we ever knew. It's time that money did some good." Rob's eyes met Rosa's, filled with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. "You'd do that? For us?" he asked. "Yes," Rosa replied, "for Elise." She turned to the girl, who was watching them with wide, hopeful eyes. "What do you say, Elise? Ready to get better and play outside again?" Elise nodded, a small smile flickering on her lips. "Yes, please," she whispered. Rosa stood, her decision made. She would not only fund Elise's operation, but also support the centre. She imagined a place where laughter was the best medicine, where children like Elise could heal and thrive. As she left the centre that day, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the world. Rosa felt Oliver's love around her, a gentle reminder that even in loss, there was a way to bring hope to others. If you enjoyed, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment with a number from 1 to 5 to let us know how much you liked the story. Also, watch the video that is currently on your screen. See you soon.